але дуже велике прохання не класти їх на стіл після того.
Якщо
Слухаю.
То вже будуть перекладати. Будуть перекладати.
It's September 13. Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheparenko. Now, within the main discussion platform of Ukraine called Brain Hub, we start the panel discussion called Ukraine's Energy Sector Challenges and Opportunities in the Context of War. I'm introducing our speakers today. It's Oleksandr Kharchenko, Director at the Energy Industry Research Center, Serhii Kuiun, Director of Consulting Group A95, Volodymyr Omelchenko, Energy Programs Director at the Razumkov Center, and Oleh Radiychuk, Energy Efficiency Expert at ANTS NGO. So, Mr. Oleksandr, Mr. Volodymyr, let's start conversation with you about this. So, talking about the situation in the energy market, you know, it's difficult to believe that the winter is coming when it's 26 degrees outside, but many Ukrainians started thinking whether this winter will be as difficult as it was previous years. So, how is Ukraine currently preparing to go through this next season easier than through the previous one? So how ready are we? So who can start? Mr. Oleksandr, maybe you will take the floor first. Okay, let me try. Good afternoon once again. You know, to say whether the winter will be as difficult as previous one, well, maybe it will be difficult in a different way, because the basic conditions are different now. If we compare our power grid before the winter of previous year and now, those are the two different grids with different dynamics of reconstruction and renewal, and with a different degree of resilience. No matter how bad we want it, but there are no technologies in the world that would be capable of renewing the destroyed facilities in a twinkling of an eye using some magic stick. But no matter how much work is already done, to be on the safe side, we should have done at least twice as much. And it happens due to quite objective reasons, like lack of equipment, which is not available in the world. Manufacturing of this equipment takes months and months, just like its transportation, month and month more. To be honest, yesterday an automatic transformer was delivered to Ukraine that was procured within the framework of the renewal program. So the newly manufactured one, it has arrived yesterday only. And it creates the situation when, during the reconstruction of the aerial networks, we had to rely upon the internal resources to move the equipment, to renew the damaged equipment, to focus to the maximum extent on the key regions and key parts of the grid, to segregate what should be immediately repaired and what can be postponed. It was a huge piece of work, and this renewal process will be on and on within the next year as well. We cannot finish the repair because we cannot repair what was damaged even within the next 2 to 3 years. So the repairing campaign is now all year long, 24/7, 52. This is the format that it will be looking like. So this rain is for at least 2 to 3 years. And talking about the biggest problems that are of concern for us now is the deficit of generation, the strikes that were inflicted mostly on the coal power plants were unfortunately successful, and we've lost more than 50% of the available generation potential that we had in October previous year, which means that there is no generation reserve at all. Those calculations that we performed, they demonstrate that in the winter, should the temperature fall below -10, without the shellings, without the missile strikes, we will be walking on the edge. You know, this edge will be fluctuating in different events to the side when we should disconnect, where we would be forced to disconnect somebody for a couple of hours or days. So the situation is extremely difficult. The work that was done is fantastic, but it's still insufficient to enter the season on the safe side. There will be restrictions of power supply, almost for sure. Will there be catastrophic? I'm confident that they will not be catastrophic. There will be no disconnections for 2 to 3 days. We have response scenarios in place. There are repair teams in place who know what to do. They're properly equipped and properly trained. We know exactly what to do, and the response will be way better than back in those days when it started, when the power grid was only just damaged. So we prepared everything that we need, and I'm sure even in case of attacks there will be no real blackout, there will be no catastrophic shutdowns, there will be moderated shutdowns, predicted shutdowns. Probably it will be operating in a mode of 4 hours on, 4 hours off, but you will know for sure when and how it will be happening. So in my opinion, the situation is like this for the time being, and I don't know what could change it before the beginning of the winter this year. Thank you very much, Mr. Volodymyr. Maybe you have something to join to the previous question, but I would like to ask you about the lack of energy resources. Oil, gas, coal, are they sufficient? And if they're not sufficient, where are we going to get them? Well, we accumulate the resources gradually. I cannot say that the situation with resources is critical. According to the plan, until the 15th to 20th of October, we need to have 1.8 million tons of coal in the storages, and now we have 1.3 million. 500,000 tons is absolutely a real figure that can be accumulated. There is news that DTEC procured 210,000 tons that are coming to Ukraine shortly. They replace the management, and the new management is trying to solve this problem immediately. There are problems in Center Energo with both accumulation of coal and engagement of capacities. In my opinion, today this company works way below their potential, maybe at 15% of their capabilities, because of honestly weak management that was present there. Just within the last couple of years, there were 6 CEOs replaced within that period. For successful operation, they need to undertake more repairs, procure more fuel, and so on and so forth. Talking about gas, as of yesterday, we had 14.2 billion cubic meters pumped in the storage facilities. The plan is 14.7, but again, one small remark, small but important. Out of those 14.2 pumped, about 2 billion cubic meters is the gas that is stored in the short haul mode, which means that those 2 billions can hardly be calculated as those to be engaged in preparation for the winter period, because those resources can be re-exported at any moment to the countries of the European Union. I think that this is the factor to reckon with. And I have to say that regardless of the fact that the things are not critical, but they're not quite perfect as well, so probably we won't make it without import, and Naftogaz will have to work in this area. They will probably have to import certain amount to fulfill this plan, the amount which exceeds 1 billion cubic meters. What else can I say? Given the conditions that we have, the repairing campaign is underway according to the plan for all types of generation: hydro generation, thermal generation, and atomic generation too. The only company that doesn't quite catch up is Centrenergo, and I've already mentioned why. I have to agree with Mr. Oleksandr Kharchenko that most likely there will be scheduled shutdowns during winter, and I forecast that the deficit of capacity during some hours of winter, when the temperature falls, when the temperature is cold enough, like below 7 degrees, the deficit may amount to 3 gigawatts, which means that during these hours we won't be able to avoid scheduled shutdowns even without any strikes by Russians. So this deficit can be compensated at least 40% at the expense of import, which is an important component, because theoretically today we can import 1.2 gigawatts. It's a half of that deficit, right? Well, yeah, roughly almost a half of deficit can be compensated. But to make it happen, we need to undertake certain measures. Those price caps that we have now, they do not correspond to the level of prices existing in the European Union now, and they will not correspond to the prices that will exist in winter, because most likely the prices are about to grow, and there will be, which means there will be no commercial interest when the price of electric power in European Union is higher than the price caps in Ukraine. So it will constitute no commercial interest to import the electric power from European Union to Ukraine, which will result in expansion of power deficit, which will be a negative phenomena for our consumers. The regulator is trying to solve this problem now in quite a surprising way. So they expect the difference in prices to be compensated by Ukrenergo, which means European companies will sell power at European prices to us, and the difference between that price and price caps will be compensated by Ukrenergo, which means that the indebtedness of Ukrenergo will only grow. They have 60 billion hryvnia debt for the time being, and they will only increase the debt because they won't be able to compensate that difference. It's a problem that should be solved by the regulator. And talking about the situation with the nuclear power plants, you mentioned that they are being repaired, the situation is quite stable, but what about the nuclear fuel? We know that we procure American fuel now. Is it sufficient? Is the system running smooth? Well, it's a sensitive issue from the security perspective, but I can say that there are no big problems in this area. You know, the latest information is that Ukraine Energoatom brought the fuel for the power block of Rivne nuclear power plant, 440 VVR. It was loaded with Westinghouse fuel. Previously it was loaded for 1000 megawatts, but now for 440 only. Well, it's positive news because we diversify the supplies and we ensure the sustainability of operation of our nuclear power plants, cutting our dependence on Russia. But I don't think that during this winter period we will have any problems with nuclear fuel. Thank you very much. Mr. Oleksandr, looking at Ukraine globally, not locally, we understand that Kyiv will be better prepared for the winter period, not only in terms of power grid, but also in terms of the city being defended by air defense systems. Can we say that some regions will enter the winter period in better condition and some in worse condition? Well, obviously we can say so. The most difficult regions are Kyiv and Odessa. The risks during the heating season are the highest due to the load on the power grid. Well, first of all, these two regions, these two cities have high demand of electric power, and the energy regions of these cities, they are energy deficit. Like the power grid of Kyiv covers only 30% of consumption, and talking about Odessa, there is nothing at all there. The projects are being implemented to improve the state of affairs, but those projects will be finished not in November as we expected, but most likely in January or February. And the situation will become better after that. And talking about other cities, we have high risk in Zaporizhia and Zhytomyr, Kropivnitsky, Kremenchuk. Those are the regions when we don't talk about the areas along the front lines like Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, that can be where the power grid can be destroyed by direct artillery or MLRS fire, where the substations can be destroyed. These regions end up in the maximum risk zone, just like Kherson or Mykolaiv automatically. The situation is quite tense there. But talking about the biggest, the most problematic, Kyiv and Odessa are the areas of the highest risk. Mr. Oleg, talking about the repair works in our power grid, is it only repair of some, are there repair works on some spots, or are we getting closer to European standards? What is the level of the power grid that we should see in the post-war Ukraine? Good afternoon. Let me not talk incompetently for all of the power grid, but in my opinion, as opinion of a person who is dealing mostly with energy efficiency, we're just doing some spot repairs. I understand that the winter is coming. it's yet another iteration, but we don't really do anything. All the funds that we were accumulating during spring and summer is just the spot. They are channeled for spot repairs. We are highly dependent on our air defense systems, and to reduce the consumption, well, we just document the problem, but we don't do anything. The statements that were pronounced in London, 800 billions worth of projects, including alternative power sources, energy efficiency, they are just statements. 800 billion is not an amount of money to be invested in the country waging the war. So we are all alone with our problem. Again, we create the decarbonization fund, we expand the energy efficiency fund, we withdraw from OSBB to other entities, but that's still not enough. We do not decentralize our power grid. We still rely upon the same 750 kilovolts aerial networks. We rely on the thermal and nuclear power plants. What's going on with the energy, with hydro generation? Well, everybody sees it. It will resist the big strikes, but we've lost some balancing potential, some significant balancing potential. So what's going on in the power grid? Can we repair it until the end of the winter at least? Well, we can do it if the government starts thinking at the level of the final consumer, not at the level of the ministry or distribution company. But so what should we do? The people should be allowed, but again, the national bank should be involved. Well, people cannot. It's only now that the energy efficiency fund starts developing program for final consumers, contemplating the modernization of private houses. Before that, it was only OSBB and people who went through all that documentary hell. I'm involved in the projects of international technical support. So any head of OSBB who went through all those circles of hell, I can recommend them as a deputy project manager in any area for the project of international technical support. The only problem is that they usually don't speak English. They will need interpreters. Whether it's the processing of documents or engineering part or communication with the citizens, specifically in the area of democracy, you have to gather your OSBB, you have to convince all of them, hear what they think about you. So what I'm trying to say, all the processes should be facilitated and the citizens should be encouraged to invest their own money, but to invest they need some stimuli, at least like reduction of taxes. I understand that we have problem with taxes in general in the country, but at least at the expense of Ukrainian taxes, what we've collected inside the country, we can finance the armed forces. But again, there is a part of the weapons that are coming from foreign partners, and we have to understand whether we can go through this winter. Now in Russia they started manufacturing the Shahed drones, and the non-concentrated, non-focused strikes on a number of substations, small boiler rooms, and thermal power plants. Well, you cannot put a cheetah near air or a mobile air defense team near every boiler room, and this is the only adequate answer for the Shahed attacks, like a small mobile teams and cheetahs. So currently the government is only talking the talk. But there is a potential, right, that the investors may come after the war who will finance the green energy. Well, we have to fulfill the directives that we are obliged to fulfill, all the obligations that we've undertaken to be admitted to the European Union, but formally within the next 2 to 3 years, we will cover all the expenses at the expense of the fall of our economy. So far, I have not seen any stimuli on part of the government. The private capital, it's only now that the idea has emerged to supply the solar power stations, how hybrid solar power stations through ESCO mechanism to the social infrastructure facilities. Will they make it through all those bids and then in the anti-monopoly committee to arrange everything, and whether they would be able to supply all of them before the beginning of the heating season? Well, I have doubts about that. Well, another important question, the question about the fuel, car fuel. The prices are growing, so where is the ceiling? What will be the situation with availability of fuel in the market in general? Well, the colleagues are saying that we await for the strikes, but our market is receiving those strikes on a daily manner. We see how the new ports are operating. A couple of truck drivers were affected by the strikes this couple of nights before. Every night or every other night we have incoming drones on incoming strikes on the facilities of oil transportation infrastructure. It's being targeted by the enemy 24/7. I cannot say that all of the strikes are efficient in terms of disruption of supplies. They give us the opportunity to regroup, and unlike the state what's going on in the south now, when those helpless ports which remain undefended are being shelled incessantly. The market realized all those risks some time ago, about 2 weeks ago. Now we're entering into new agreements for supply of the fuel through Polish and Romanian ports. A great job was done for transborder transportation, because again, I'm reminding you, we have a different width of the railway. We have to take the tanks and put them on our rails from Europe. But again, great job was done in this respect, and I'm sure we will have no deficit of fuel this winter. Talking about the price, I'm reminding you, back in June we had a price of $75 per barrel of oil. Last week we've crossed the level of $90, and there was a couple of days when the price was at 91. So unfortunately, this scenario of Saudi Arabia with Russia about the restriction of supply to the global market to lift the price, so this scenario unfortunately works. It was a jackpot within the last couple of months for us. because along with the growth of price we got the return of the old taxes, and everything happened just as we predicted because there was nothing else to predict. The wholesale price has grown 13 to 14 hryvnias per liter. It's about 30% of the cost of the diesel fuel, and is the wholesale price. The retail price is not catching up yet. In retail, the difference, the growth is only 9 to 10 hryvnias. But again, this potential is exhausted now, and the main driver now is the growth of global prices. Today, there is another wave of correction of prices. The liquefied gas keeps growing, for example, and I'm afraid this is not the last correction. We were predicting this growth back in the beginning of September, but the market was resisting for like 10 days more. It's a little bit too premature to say that the price will grow up to 60 hryvnias per liter, but I'm not sure that the oil will stop at $90 per barrel, so everything will depend on the external factors. Well, and in the next year's budget, the rate of dollar is 40 to 44 hryvnias. Will it be another factor to influence the prices in the market? And now that you've mentioned that the new logistic chains are being built, does it add another hryvnia to the prices? Well, there is a direct connection. We buy the imported fuel, so the higher is the currency exchange rate, the more hryvnias we will need to buy that currency, the higher is the price of fuel. You know, there was a proportion that each hryvnia in the rate of dollar amounts to 80 kopecks in the liter of fuel. So if the rate will grow from 36 to 41 hryvnias, just at the expense of currency exchange rate, the prices will add another 4 hryvnias. So what is the real price of gas and diesel for this winter? Well, in our sector, we don't give such a long-term forecast. Look, within the last couple of months, the oil has grown almost 20%. How can we predict what will happen in another 2 months and then another 2 months? Well, we just hope that the West will just reinforce the sanctions, because it's quite obvious, as long as the price for fuel grows, even the reduced amount of exports from Russia will result in profit for them, profit that they need to wage the war. So we have to get back to this problem again. We cannot say that those sanctions that were already imposed, that they were quite efficient. Obviously, there are some results. There is no doubt about it, but we understand that we have to move further. I hope there will be the new political season starting. I know that there will be a lot of talks about that, and we have to keep talking as well. So the lower is the global price of oil, the lower is the profit of the aggressor. Now the picture is quite the opposite. The price is growing, and I only have a hope that this growth is of no advantage to the West, and the West will look for some ways to solve the situation. Thank you very much. I want to invite our journalists to join our conversations. Dear journalists, do you have any questions to our guests? Karina Vakareva, 1+1. I'm preparing the material now, and the sentiment in the society is quite passive. Not a lot of people are preparing to the new heating season. So my question is as follows: Can the Ukrainians relax, and what are your recommendations? What can you recommend for Ukrainians? How should they prepare to the new heating seasons given the existing conditions? Thank you. Well, let me try to start. Let me start and we'll see how it goes. Well, if you want to ask whether anyone can relax, so the answer is no. I live outside the city in a house, and I've already asked my electrician to maintain the generator, to check the network in my house, to maintain the battery. This is an absolutely crucial step, because I'm sure that the load on the generator will be just as big as it used to be. And if you don't have a generator, you know it's about time to buy it, because when it all starts, the prices will go up immediately. Talking about the battery devices at home, whether they're worth buying it for your home, yes, absolutely. You have to buy something to make sure you may cook some food. You should procure, or you should get water. And for the residents of the apartment blocks, look, even if there is enough electric power for the operation of critical infrastructure in the city, I mean like sewage and subway, mostly in the apartment blocks, for the water to go up the building, you have to ensure the operation of the pumps that are usually installed in the building itself. So if there are no additional generators installed for those pumps, during long blackout, you will have no water in your apartments, and then it will get cold. Well, it's not gonna get freezing, but it will be cold. So where there is no OSBB, please make sure that in those parts of the building where you live, those reserve generators are installed on the pumps, because otherwise it will be your fault that you don't have this water when this hot water is circulating in the tubes, but this water doesn't go up all the way to the highest floors. This is the basic set, but there is yet another recommendation about how we use the electric power, because the most critical part of the day is the period of the peak loads from 6 to 8 in the morning and from 6 to 10 in the night, when people are either going to work or coming back from work. So during this period, please switch off the electric boiler. The hot water will be enough. Don't use the washing machine. Don't use irons during these hours. If you want to boil some water in the electric kettle, you know, it's a huge consumer. Just add 1 cup of water there, or 2 or 3 cups, just an amount sufficient for your family to drink a cup of tea. This is the amount that influences significantly. You know, you switch on the kettle, Omelchenko realizes that they're running out of power for whole of your block, and this disconnect you, I mean the whole block. So please be austere, and during the peak hours, please try to reduce the consumption of electric power. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? And some continuation. Yeah, a small comment to what Mr. Oleksandr has just said. Those are the general recommendations. Don't only use them during this winter. Those are the general recommendations to reduce the consumption of electric power. Well, what's happening now, it depends on amount of money that you have, if you're capable of installing a thermal pump in your private building, go ahead and do it right now. Well, for the private house, it's a good option. If you have an opportunity to install a small solar power plant, a hybrid power plant with a battery, even if you have a small battery and the hybrid station can switch on with the help of the generator, so on the sunny day you will have the full capacity of this solar power plant, and it will ensure the operation of your fridge. So go ahead and install it, but those are the costly measures. From those cheaper, I don't really know what to recommend for the city. Well, here, unfortunately, energy efficiency measures, they take a lot of resources and are of a long-term nature. So manage your energy consumption. Don't bring it over the peak hours, because if everybody will do like that, the consumption line will be flat without peaks, and this is how we support ourselves. Well, in continuation of this question, well, quick question from me personally. Last winter, when people were asked to reduce the consumption, people were switching off the lights everywhere, pulling the microwaves out of the sockets. Does it really help, or it makes no difference given the fact that the electric kettles are the most energy consuming? Well, you know, it helps to even save the lives of those devices, because under the conditions of the shutdowns, electric devices, their operation is not so stable. For example, if you switch or you pull an electric device out of the socket for the night, and in case of the significant fluctuations in the power grid, you know, it will save the lifetime of this device, and it will not result in a breakdown, and it may additionally train a good behavior of the efficient energy consumer. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of our panelists now that we don't have any more questions. And within the framework of Brain Hub, we were discussing the main challenges faced by the power grid of Ukraine in the context of war. We're preparing the schedule for tomorrow, so please stay tuned.